The knock on the hotel door was soft, too soft to belong to a confrontation. Rachel smiled as she walked toward it, still laughing at something the man behind her had just said. Then she opened the door and saw her children. Behind them, Elliot stood in silence. Her smile didn't fade. It shattered. Seattle had a way of hiding things. Fog rolled in like a secret, softening edges, blurring outlines, making everything look whole from a distance. Elliot Carter used to think that was beautiful. Now he wondered how many lives had quietly fallen apart behind that gray veil. It started with something small. It always did. A Tuesday night, rain against the window. Rachel sitting at the kitchen island, her laptop open, her face lit by the cold glow of emails that never seemed to end. Elliot stood by the sink, drying dishes that didn't need drying, watching her, not suspicious, not yet just aware. "You're traveling again?" he asked. Rachel didn't look up immediately. That was the first thing. She said, fingers still moving across the keyboard. "Chicago, Friday." "Oh yeah." A pause. Then a smile, quick and practiced. "Just a quick client thing. 2 nights, maybe 3. Maybe." That word stayed with him longer than it should have. Elliot nodded, folding the dish towel slowly. "You've had a lot of those lately." Rachel finally looked at him, tilting her head slightly. "It's called having a demanding job, Elliot." Her tone wasn't sharp. Not quite. But it carried something underneath defensiveness dressed as casualness, I know, he said quietly. And he did know. He respected her ambition. He had always admired how she walked into rooms and made people listen. Rachel Carter didn't ask for space, she took it. But something had shifted. Not dramatically, not enough to point at and say there, just enough. Later that night, Elliot lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling while Rachel slept with her back turned toward him. The space between them felt measured, intentional, like furniture arranged carefully in a room to avoid collision. He tried to remember the last time she had reached for him in the dark. He couldn't. The pattern didn't announce itself. It assembled quietly. A missed call at midnight. A message notification that disappeared too quickly. A perfume he didn't recognize, subtle, expensive, not hers. Each detail on its own meant nothing. Together they formed a question Elliot wasn't ready to ask. So he didn't. Instead, he watched. 3 weeks later, Rachel stood in the doorway with her suitcase. "Emma has piano on Thursday," she said, "and Noah's got that science project. Don't let him procrastinate." "I won't." She hesitated just for a second. "I'll call when I land." "You always do." A flicker crossed her face, guilt maybe, or irritation. It was gone too quickly to name. "Elliot," she said softly, "you trust me, right?" There it was, not an accusation, not a confession, a preemptive defense. Elliot met her eyes, holding them just long enough to feel the weight of the question. "I trust what I can see," he said. Rachel smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's a strange way to answer. It's an honest one." She didn't respond. She just nodded, picked up her suitcase, and left. The door clicked shut with a quiet finality. That night, Elliot sat alone in the living room. Emma was upstairs, headphones on, lost in music. Noah had fallen asleep on the couch beside him, a half-finished Lego structure still clutched in his hand. Elliot looked at his phone. Rachel had texted, "Landed. Long day tomorrow. Love you." He stared at the message. There was a time when those 3 words would have settled something inside him, anchored him. Now they felt rehearsed. He typed back, "Take care." He didn't add anything else. The first real crack came 2 days later. It wasn't dramatic. It was a receipt. Elliot had been organizing files on their shared cloud account, a mundane task, the kind that filled quiet afternoons. He wasn't looking for anything. That's what made it worse. A hotel invoice, Chicago, 3 nights, 2 guests. Elliot stared at the screen, his hand still on the mouse. 2 guests. His mind didn't jump to conclusions. It resisted them. There had to be an explanation, a colleague, a booking error. Something simple, something fixable. But beneath that logic, something colder settled in, a recognition. not of the act, but of the pattern. When Rachel came home, everything looked normal. She kissed the kids, asked about school, laughed at something Noah said. The same gestures, the same rhythm. But Elliot saw it now, the slight delay before she answered questions, the way she avoided specifics, the careful editing of her own life. That night, after the kids were asleep, he asked, "Who were you with in Chicago?" Rachel didn't even blink. "A client," she said. Why Elliot watched her carefully. The hotel listed 2 guests, a pause, then a soft laugh. "Elliot, come on. That's probably just how they book corporate stays. You're reading into nothing." "Nothing." The word landed heavier than it should have. "You're sure?" he asked. Rachel's expression shifted subtly but unmistakably. "Do you not trust me?" she said. There it was again, not an answer. A redirection. Elliot held her gaze. "I'm asking you a question, and I'm answering it," she replied, her tone tightening. "You're imagining things." Silence stretched between them. Elliot nodded slowly. "Okay." Rachel exhaled relief flickering across her face. "Good. Because this," she gestured between them, "this isn't you." No, it wasn't. Because Elliot wasn't going to argue. He wasn't going to chase answers that were being carefully hidden. He was going to wait, and this time he was going to see everything. That night, long after Rachel had fallen asleep, Elliot sat in the dark with his laptop open. Flight records, expense reports, booking confirmations. He didn't rush. He didn't panic. He simply followed the pattern. And for the first time, he stopped hoping he was wrong. By all visible measures, the Carters were doing well. That was the problem. Their house in Queen Anne stood exactly as it should: clean lines, glass walls, curated warmth. The kind of home that suggested stability without ever needing to say it out loud. On weekends, Elliot mowed the lawn while neighbors waved. Rachel attended networking brunches, her smile polished, her voice confident, her presence admired. Together they looked intact, but inside something had gone quiet. Not broken, not yet, just absent. It revealed itself in the smallest places. A dinner table where conversation stayed on the surface, school schedules, deadlines, errands. A couch where they sat side by side, scrolling through separate worlds. A bed where their bodies aligned out of habit, not desire. Elliot began to notice how often Rachel filled silence with distraction. Her phone became an extension of her hand. Even when she wasn't typing, she held it like an anchor or a shield. Notifications were checked quickly, dismissed faster. Screens angled away, just enough to feel deliberate. "Who keeps texting you this late?" Elliot asked one evening. Rachel didn't look up. "Work." "It's 11:40. Marketing doesn't sleep, Elliot." Her tone was light, almost playful. But there was a sharpness underneath, like a blade wrapped in silk. He studied her for a moment. "You used to tell me about your work. I still do." "No," he said quietly. "You summarize it." That made her pause, just for a second. Then she set her phone down with a soft, controlled motion. "What is this really about?" Elliot didn't answer immediately. He leaned back in his chair, watching her, not accusing, not emotional. Just present. "I'm trying to understand when we stop talking," he said. Rachel exhaled through her nose, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "We didn't stop talking. You're just overanalyzing things again." There it was, not denial, reframing. Gaslighting didn't come as aggression, it came as subtle correction. A shift in narrative. A suggestion that reality itself had been misinterpreted. And Rachel was good at it. "You're stressed," she added, gently standing up and walking toward him. "You've been buried in work. It makes sense that you'd feel disconnected." She placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch warm, familiar. "Strategic." Elliot looked up at her. "Do you feel disconnected?" he asked. Rachel hesitated, then smiled. "I think we're just in a phase. Every marriage has them. A phase, temporary, manageable, dismissible." Elliot nodded slowly as if accepting it, but something inside him had already shifted. The next morning he watched her differently. Not like a husband observing his wife, but like someone studying a pattern. Rachel moved through the kitchen with efficiency coffee brewing, emails already open on her phone, her attention divided but controlled. She kissed Emma on the forehead, reminded Noah about his homework, and grabbed her keys. Late tonight, she said casually. Client dinner. Which client? Elliot asked. Rachel froze, barely noticeable, but he saw it. Westbrook, she replied quickly. The retail account. Elliot nodded. I thought that contract closed last quarter. A beat, then a laugh. You're really keeping tabs on my clients now, I'm just asking. And I'm answering, she said, her tone tightening just enough. God, Elliot, not everything is a cross-examination. There it was again. Defense, redirection, subtle blame. He raised his hand slightly. I didn't say it was. Rachel grabbed her bag, clearly irritated now. I don't have time for this. And just like that, she was gone. Elliot stood alone in the kitchen, the echo of the door closing settling into the quiet. He didn't feel angry. That was what surprised him most. No surge of rage, no urge to confront or accuse. Just clarity. Because this wasn't confusion anymore, it was structure. A system of avoidance carefully maintained. And he was starting to see how long it had been in place. That evening, Elliot sat in his home office, the glow of his laptop illuminating the dark room. He wasn't guessing anymore. He was verifying. Calendar entries, flight confirmations, expense reimbursements. Each piece on its own was harmless. But together they told a story Rachel wasn't saying out loud. Chicago, Boston, San Diego. Trips that overlapped with client meetings that didn't exist. Hotel stays that extended beyond scheduled events. Gaps. Always gaps. Elliot leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. This wasn't new. That realization landed heavier than any single piece of evidence. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. And patterns required time, consistency, practice. A notification pulled his attention back to the screen. Rachel had shared a photo on social media. A rooftop bar. City lights. A glass of wine in her hand. Caption: long day. Earned this. Elliot stared at the image. There was no sign of anyone else. But the angle, the framing, it wasn't taken by her. Someone else had been there. Close enough, comfortable enough. Later that night, Rachel came home just after midnight. The house was dark except for the soft light in the living room where Elliot sat waiting. She paused when she saw him. You're still up. I wanted to talk. A flicker of annoyance crossed her face. Can it wait? I'm exhausted. No, Elliot said calmly. It can't. Rachel sighed, setting her bag down. Okay, what is it? Elliot gestured toward the couch. She hesitated, then sat crossing her legs, her posture already guarded. You said you were with Westbrook tonight, he began. I was. They posted their quarterly report this afternoon. No mention of any meetings, no dinner events. Rachel's eyes narrowed slightly. Are you seriously fact-checking my day now I'm trying to understand it? Her laugh was sharper this time. Or you're trying to catch me in something that doesn't exist. Elliot didn't react. I saw your photo, he continued. Who took it? Rachel blinked. Just once. I asked a waiter, she said quickly. Which restaurant? Elliot. Her voice rose. Frustration bleeding through. This is insane. Is it? Yes. She stood up abruptly. You're acting paranoid. This isn't healthy. There it was. The shift. From defense to attack. Elliot stood as well, his movement slow, deliberate. Then help me understand, he said. Because right now, nothing you're saying lines up. Rachel shook her head, pacing now. I don't have to justify every second of my life to you. I'm not asking for every second. Then what are you asking for? She snapped. The question hung in the air. Elliot looked at her, really looked this time. I'm asking if you're telling me the truth. Silence. Rachel's breathing slowed. Her expression shifted again, softer now, almost hurt. I can't believe you'd even ask me that, she said quietly. And for a moment, just a moment, it almost worked. But Elliot had already crossed a line internally. Not into anger, into awareness. I'm asking because I don't recognize you anymore, he said. Rachel's eyes flickered. That's not my fault, she replied. People change. Yes, Elliot said. They do. Another pause. Then softer. But they don't usually hide it this carefully. That landed. He saw it. The crack. Small but real. Rachel looked away first. I'm going to bed, she said, her voice tight. Elliot didn't stop her, didn't follow, didn't push, because he didn't need to anymore. As the bedroom door closed behind her, Elliot sat back down in the silence. His chest felt heavy, but not with confusion, with certainty. This wasn't just infidelity. It was something deeper, longer, a life running parallel to his own, carefully constructed, carefully protected. And for the first time, Elliot stopped wondering if Rachel was lying and started asking a different question. How long had she been living a life he was never meant to see? He opened his laptop again, not as a husband, but as someone preparing for the truth. There is a moment quiet, almost invisible, when doubt stops being emotional and becomes structural. Elliot recognized that moment not by what he felt, but by what he stopped feeling. He no longer needed reassurance. He no longer hoped to be wrong. He no longer asked why. He asked how. It began with discipline, not obsession, not desperation, precision. Elliot created a folder on his laptop. No dramatic name, just a date. Inside it, he started placing pieces of Rachel's life, not the version she showed him, but the one she forgot to hide completely. Airline confirmations pulled from their shared credit card. Hotel invoices quietly archived in cloud backups. Ride receipts, timestamps, locations. Individually, they were harmless. Together, they formed a rhythm. Chicago hadn't been an exception, it had been a continuation. Elliot leaned back in his chair one evening, the soft hum of the house settling around him. Emma was upstairs studying. Noah had fallen asleep early, exhausted from school and soccer. Rachel was in the shower. Water running, door closed, predictable, safe. Elliot opened the spreadsheet he had built. Dates on the left, cities on the right, and in between gaps, always gaps. Boston, 3-day conference. Except the conference had ended on day 2, Rachel stayed an extra night. No explanation. San Diego. Client meetings. Except the client's office had been closed for renovations that week. New York. 2 separate trips. Same hotel, same room number. 2 months apart. Elliot didn't rush his conclusions. He tested them, cross-referenced public event schedules, checked corporate calendars, verified locations with timestamps embedded in photos Rachel had posted casually online. What he found wasn't chaos, it was consistency. And consistency was far more dangerous. The evidence didn't scream, it whispered. Soft, repetitive, patient. Like a truth that didn't need to convince, only to exist. The first time Elliot said it out loud, it wasn't in anger. It was in a whisper to an empty room. This isn't new. The words felt foreign and yet completely accurate. Because nothing about Rachel's behavior suggested panic. No sudden changes, no erratic decisions, no signs of someone covering a fresh mistake. This was practiced, refined, lived in. Later that night, Rachel walked into the bedroom wrapped in a towel, her hair damp, her skin warm from the shower. She looked the same. That was the unsettling part. "You're still working?" she asked, glancing at his laptop. "Just organizing some files," Elliot replied. Rachel smiled faintly. "You and your systems." He returned the smile, but now he understood something he hadn't before Rachel had her own system. She moved through the room with quiet confidence, unaware or unconcerned that anything had shifted. "How's Emma doing with her math?" she asked. "Better," Elliot said. "She just needs consistency." Rachel nodded absently, already reaching for her phone. Consistency. The word lingered between them unnoticed by her. "Unavoidable to him," Rachel Elliot said suddenly. She looked up. Yeah, he watched her carefully, not searching for guilt, but for reaction. "When you travel, do you ever feel like you're living a different life?" A pause. Not long, but enough. "What kind of question is that?" she asked lightly. "A real one." Rachel tilted her head, studying him now. Everyone feels different when they travel. It's normal. Why? Elliot held her gaze. Different how? Her smile returned, but thinner this time. Less responsibility, more focus. It's work, Elliot, not some alternate universe. He nodded slowly. Right, he said, but he had already seen it. That flicker. That hesitation before she defined the boundary. That night Elliot didn't sleep, not because of anxiety, but because of clarity. His mind wasn't racing, it was aligning. Pieces falling into place not chaotically, but inevitably. By morning he had made a decision. He wasn't going to confront Rachel again, not yet, because confrontation required something he no longer had uncertainty. Instead, he shifted his role, from husband to witness. The next trip came sooner than expected. Denver, Rachel said over breakfast. Just 2 nights. Quick turnaround. Elliot nodded, buttering his toast. Which hotel? Rachel blinked just slightly. I haven't booked it yet. I can recommend one, he said casually. I stayed at the Halcyon last year. Good location. A beat, then a shrug. Maybe. I'll see what corporate suggests. Of course she would. Because control mattered. Details mattered. And Elliot was starting to understand just how carefully those details had been managed. That afternoon, after Rachel left for work, Elliot made a call. Not to a lawyer, not yet. To someone quieter. A private investigator. The conversation was brief, professional, emotionless. I don't need surveillance, Elliot said. I need verification. The man on the other end paused. There's usually a reason people think they need that. I already have a reason, Elliot replied. I need confirmation. Another pause. Then understood. Elliot hung up and sat in silence. This was the line. Not dramatic, not visible, but irreversible. That evening, Rachel came home with takeout and a bright smile as if nothing in their world had shifted. Thought we could have a family night, she said. No phones, no work. Emma lit up. Noah cheered. Elliot smiled too, because he understood something now that made the moment sharper, not softer. Rachel wasn't pretending, not entirely. She believed in these moments. She just believed in another life too. As they sat together laughing over something trivial, Elliot watched her. Not with anger, not with longing, but with a quiet, steady awareness. He didn't need her to confess. He didn't need her to slip. He didn't need emotion to drive this anymore. Because the truth was already forming, piece by piece, trip by trip, lie by lie. And when it finally surfaced, it wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be chaotic. It would be undeniable. Elliot reached for his glass of water, his movements calm, measured. Across the table, Rachel met his eyes and smiled. Everything okay? She asked. Elliot held her gaze, for a moment longer than necessary. Yes, he said. And this time he meant it, because he wasn't searching anymore. He was preparing. The decision didn't feel dramatic. It didn't arrive with anger or urgency. It came quietly like everything else had. Rachel announced the trip on a Thursday morning halfway through her coffee. San Francisco, she said, scrolling through her phone. 2 nights, maybe 3. Big client presentation. Elliot looked up from the newspaper, his expression neutral. When do you leave tomorrow afternoon? Of course she did. Short notice, minimal discussion. No room for questions. It had become her pattern compressing information into tight windows where curiosity felt inconvenient. Elliot nodded. Which hotel? Rachel didn't hesitate this time. The Fairmont, she said smoothly. Corporate booked it. A clean answer. Too clean. Elliot folded the newspaper slowly, his mind already moving ahead of the moment. San Francisco, not Chicago, not Boston, not Denver. A new location. But the pattern would be the same, because it always was. Sounds like a nice place, he said. Rachel smiled faintly. It's work, not a vacation. Of course. A pause settled between them, not uncomfortable but deliberate. Rachel watched him carefully now. You're being very calm about all this lately, she said. Elliot met her gaze. Should I not be? I don't know, she replied, her tone light but probing. You were asking a lot of questions before, and now I'm not. Rachel tilted her head slightly. Why is that? Elliot held her eyes for a moment. Because I realized something he said quietly. What that asking only matters if someone intends to answer honestly. The words landed gently, but they stayed. Rachel's smile flickered. Not gone, but thinner. You're implying I haven't been honest, she asked. I'm saying I don't need to imply anything anymore. Silence. Not loud, but heavy enough to be noticed. Rachel exhaled, setting her coffee down with a soft clink. You're doing that thing again, she said, turning everything into something bigger than it is. Elliot didn't respond immediately, because this time he wasn't playing the same role. I'm not turning anything into anything, he said finally. I'm just paying attention. Rachel let out a quiet laugh, shaking her head. That's a dangerous habit, Elliot, only for people who have something to hide. There it was, clear, direct, no anger, no accusation layered in emotion, just truth placed carefully on the table between them. Rachel stood up, not abruptly, but with intention. I have a meeting, she said, grabbing her bag. We'll talk about this later. Elliot nodded. We will. But they both knew they wouldn't, not in the way she expected. That night, Elliot didn't open his laptop. He didn't review receipts. He didn't check timelines. Because he already had enough. Not for confrontation, for confirmation. Instead, he sat with Emma and Noah at the kitchen table, helping with homework, listening to stories that didn't require interpretation. Emma talked about a friend who had lied about something small and how it made everything else feel uncertain. I don't get why people lie when it's obvious, she said, frowning. Like, don't they know it just makes it worse? Elliot glanced at her, a quiet ache settling in his chest. They know, he said softly. They just hope it won't catch up to them. Noah looked up from his project. Does it always? Elliot met his son's eyes. Yes, he said. Always. Later, after they had gone to bed, Elliot stood in the hallway outside their rooms. He listened for a moment. Soft breathing, stillness, safety. This wasn't about exposing Rachel. Not really. It wasn't about punishment or revenge. It was about truth and who deserved to see it. The next day moved with quiet precision. Rachel left for the airport just after lunch, her suitcase rolling behind her, her goodbye, brief but affectionate. I'll call when I land, she said, kissing Elliot lightly on the cheek. I know, he replied. She hesitated just for a second, then smiled and walked out the door. Elliot waited. Not long. Just enough. At 2:17 p.m., Rachel's flight departed. At 2:43 p.m., Elliot closed his laptop. At 3:05 p.m., he called the school. Hi, this is Elliot Carter. Emma and Noah's father. I need to pick them up early today. A pause. Everything okay? Yes, Elliot said. I just want to spend some time with them. By 3:40 p.m., Emma and Noah were in the car. Are we in trouble? Noah asked immediately. Elliot smiled faintly. No, not at all. Emma studied him more carefully. Then why are you picking us up early? Elliot adjusted the rear view mirror, meeting her eyes. Because I want you to come with me somewhere. Where? He paused. Just long enough to choose the truth, but not all of it. To see your mom. The drive was quiet at first. Seattle fading behind them, highway stretching forward. Emma didn't ask more questions, but she watched everything. She always did. Is Mom working? Noah asked. Yes, Elliot said. Then are we surprising her? Elliot's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Yes, he said again. A surprise. That was one way to describe it. The flight to San Francisco was uneventful, children distracted by movies and snacks. Elliot focused on timing, precision, not speed, not emotion. By the time they reached the city, the sky had already begun to dim, the golden light of evening settling over glass towers and quiet streets. The hotel stood exactly where Rachel had said it would. Elegant, imposing, anonymous in the way all luxury places were. Elliot checked them in under his name, no complications, no questions, just another family passing through. The elevator ride was silent. Noah leaned against the wall, tired. Emma stood still, her eyes flicking between the floor numbers and her father's reflection in the mirrored panel. You're nervous, she said quietly. Elliot looked at her. I'm focused, he replied. Emma didn't respond, but she understood more than he wanted her to. The hallway was quiet. Thick carpet absorbing their footsteps, muted lights casting long shadows. Room numbers passing slowly as they walked. Elliot stopped in front of one door. He didn't check the number again. He already knew. His hand hovered near the handle, then lowered. Instead, he turned to Emma and Noah. "I want you to knock," he said gently. Noah blinked. "Why?" "Because it's your mom." Emma's expression shifted, something clicking into place. Not fully, but enough. "Dad," she started. Elliot met her eyes, and for the first time there was something unguarded in his. Not anger, not fear, just truth. "Please," he said. Emma stepped forward slowly, her hand raised, hesitated, then knocked. Soft, polite, innocent. Inside the room there was movement, a pause, a muffled voice, footsteps approaching the door. Elliot didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. The handle turned, and the door began to open. The knock echoed softer than Elliot expected. Not weak, not hesitant, just ordinary. That was the part that would stay with him later. How something so ordinary could carry so much weight. Inside the room there was a shift, a pause in movement. A muffled voice, male low, unfamiliar. "Did you order something?" Rachel's voice followed, casual at first. "No, Footsteps. Closer. Then silence. Emma stood still after knocking her hand slowly lowering to her side. Noah glanced up at her, then back at the door, uncertain but trusting. Elliot stood a step behind them. Not moving, not intervening. This moment didn't belong to him anymore. The handle turned, slowly, and then the door opened. Rachel Carter appeared in the frame, barefoot, hair slightly undone, wearing a white hotel robe that wasn't fully tied. For a fraction of a second she smiled automatic polite, expecting a stranger. Then she saw Emma. The smile faltered. Confusion flickered. Emma, then Noah. And something deeper cracked. "What are you—" And then she saw Elliot. Time didn't stop, but it lost its structure. Everything stretched. Sound dulled. Movement slowed. Rachel's face drained of color so quickly it felt unnatural, like something had been erased from her. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her eyes moved Emma, Noah, Elliot back and forth, searching for context that didn't exist. Behind her, a man stepped into view. Mid-40s, confident posture, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. Not rushed, not panicked. Just present. And in that single moment, he said everything Rachel couldn't. No one screamed. No one moved. Noah frowned slightly, looking up at his mother. "Mom." The word broke something in the air. Rachel blinked as if waking from a dream she couldn't control. She started, her voice barely forming. "What are you doing here?" The question came out wrong. Not how, not why, just deflection. Elliot didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because the truth wasn't a conversation anymore. It was a scene. Emma's eyes shifted slowly past her mother to the man behind her. Her expression didn't explode into emotion. It changed quietly. Understanding arriving too fast. Rachel noticed, and panic, real panic, finally surfaced. "This isn't—" She began stepping forward, slightly blocking the doorway. Too late. The image had already formed. Elliot spoke then, calm, measured, move. One word. No force behind it, no anger, just certainty. Rachel shook her head quickly. "Elliot, listen to me. This isn't what it looks like." "It is," he said. Not louder, just clearer. The man behind her exhaled softly, running a hand through his hair. He didn't interrupt, didn't defend, didn't leave. Because he didn't need to. His presence was already the answer. Emma took a small step back. Not dramatic, but intentional. Distance. Noah looked confused, now his eyes darting between faces. "Mom? Who is that?" The question landed harder than anything else. Rachel's composure fractured. "Not completely, but enough. He's a colleague," she said quickly. "We were just going over—" "Stop." Elliot's voice cut through the sentence. Still calm, still controlled, but final. Rachel froze because she heard it. Not anger, not accusation, something worse. Closure. Don't do that, Elliot said quietly. Not in front of them. Silence. Heavy, unforgiving. The man shifted slightly, finally speaking. I think I should know, Elliot said without looking at him. The man stopped, not out of respect, out of recognition. He understood what this was now. Not a confrontation, a conclusion. Rachel's breathing had become uneven. Her hands trembled, slightly clutching the edge of the door. I can explain, she whispered. Elliot nodded once. I know, he said. A pause. Then you just don't want to. Emma turned her face away, her jaw tightening. Noah stepped closer to Elliot now, instinctively, seeking something solid. Rachel saw it. And something inside her collapsed further. Please, she said, her voice breaking, not like this. Elliot looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time there was something unmistakable in his eyes. Not rage, not heartbreak. Absence. You chose this, he said. The words weren't loud, but they carried weight. You just didn't think anyone would see it. Rachel shook her head, tears finally forming. I didn't mean for what, Elliot asked. His voice didn't rise, but it sharpened. For them to know, he gestured slightly toward the kids. For me to find out, or for it to become real. Each question landed without space for escape. Rachel couldn't answer, because every version of the truth led to the same place. Elliot stepped forward slightly, not into the room, but close enough that the distance no longer protected her. This isn't about what you meant, he said quietly. It's about what you did. Silence filled the hallway again. Thicker now. Final. The man behind Rachel looked away, not out of guilt, but because even he understood this wasn't his moment. Emma reached for Noah's hand, held it tightly. Neither of them spoke. Because they didn't need to. They had seen enough. Rachel wiped at her tears, her voice barely holding together. Elliot, please, just give me a chance to... He shook his head. Not harsh, not dramatic, just done. You had chances, he said. A pause, then softer every time you walked through that door. Rachel's body stilled, because she understood what he meant. Not this door, all of them. All the time she left, all the time she came back pretending nothing had changed. Elliot stepped back, creating space. Not for her. For himself? Get dressed, he said calmly. Rachel blinked, confused. What we're leaving, he said. She stared at him. You can't just... I'm not asking. Something in his tone made her stop. Completely. Because this wasn't a man reacting anymore. This was a man who had already decided. Rachel turned slowly, walking back into the room. Not arguing, not resisting, because for the first time she had nothing left to control. The man stepped aside as she passed him. He didn't speak again, didn't try to intervene, didn't matter anymore. Elliot stood in the doorway, his hand resting lightly against it. Not entering, not claiming anything inside, because everything that mattered had already stepped out. Emma, Noah, truth. And as Rachel disappeared into the room to gather what little dignity she had left, Elliot finally exhaled. Not in relief, not in victory, but in clarity. Because the silence that followed was louder than anything that could have been said. The room felt different once the door closed. Not quieter, heavier. Rachel sat at the edge of the hotel bed, fully dressed now, but not composed. Her hands were clasped too tightly in her lap, her shoulders slightly hunched, as if posture alone could contain what was unraveling inside her. Elliot stood near the window. Emma and Noah were in the adjoining room, the door left slightly open, close enough to feel safe, far enough to be shielded. That distance mattered. Elliot made sure of it. Rachel spoke first. I need you to listen to me. Her voice was controlled again, not steady but trying to be. Elliot didn't turn around. I am. A pause. Then, that wasn't what it looked like. There it was. Not truth, not even a new lie. Just the first instinct. Denial. Elliot nodded slowly, still facing the window, the city lights stretching endlessly below. Then tell me what it was. Rachel exhaled, seizing the opening. He's a client. We had drinks. Things got blurred. It was a mistake. A mistake. Singular. Contained. Manageable. Elliot turned now. Looked at her fully. Which time the question landed without warning. Rachel blinked. What? Which time was the mistake? Her expression faltered just for a second. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. His tone wasn't aggressive. That was what made it worse. Rachel shook her head quickly, defensive rising again. You're twisting this. You walked in on one moment, and now you're building a whole narrative around it, Boston Elliot said. She stopped. Just slightly. 3 nights, he continued. Conference ended on the 2nd. Rachel's lips parted. No sound. San Diego Elliot added, Client office closed. You stayed anyway. Her breathing changed, subtle, but undeniable. New York, he said. Same hotel, same room, 2 months apart. Silence. Complete. Rachel stared at him now. Not defensive, not composed. Searching. How do you know that? She asked quietly. Elliot didn't answer immediately. He walked to the desk, opened his laptop, and turned it toward her. No drama, no flourish, just information. Receipts, dates, locations, patterns. Rachel's eyes moved across the screen, slower with each line. Recognition replacing denial. Memory catching up with evidence. This doesn't mean anything, she said quickly, but the words lacked structure now. These are just trips. Work trips. You're connecting things that stop. The word wasn't loud, but it cut through everything. Rachel froze. Because something had changed. Not in the evidence. In him. I didn't come here to guess, Elliot said. He stepped closer, not threatening but undeniable. I already know. A pause. Then softer. I just want to hear how honest you're willing to be. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Not emotional yet. Instinctive. A reaction to pressure. I told you, she said, her voice shaking slightly. It was a mistake. Elliot nodded. Then say his name. Silence. Rachel looked away. I don't need to. Yes, you do. Another pause. Longer this time, heavier. Daniel, she whispered. The name settled into the room like something permanent. Elliot absorbed it without reaction. How long? Rachel shook her head immediately. It wasn't. How long, he repeated. Not louder, just immovable. Her defenses started to fracture. You could see it. In the way her shoulders dropped. In the way her gaze stopped holding. A few months, she said. Elliot didn't respond. Didn't argue. Didn't accuse. He just reached for the laptop again, scrolled, turned it back toward her, a timeline, not emotional, not exaggerated. Just facts. Rachel stared at it, and this time she didn't speak, because she couldn't. Elliot watched her carefully, not with satisfaction, not with anger, with precision. Try again, he said quietly. Rachel's breath caught. Her hands trembled now, no longer controlled. I don't, she started, but the words collapsed halfway through, because the structure was gone. The version of the story she had been holding, it didn't fit anymore. A year, she said finally, the words barely audible. Elliot closed his eyes briefly, not in pain, in confirmation. When did it start? He asked. Rachel wiped at her face, shaking her head. I don't remember exactly, Rachel. Her name. Clear. Grounded. Unavoidable. Last spring, she said quickly, after the Chicago conference. Elliot nodded slowly, because he already knew that. And before him, the question hit harder. Rachel looked up, startled. What? Before him, Elliot repeated. Was he the first? Silence. Long. Heavy. Rachel's eyes filled again, but this time something deeper surfaced. Not defense. Not strategy. Fear. No, she whispered. The word didn't echo. It sank. Elliot didn't react outwardly, but something inside him closed. How many? He asked. Rachel shook her head, panicking now. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't like that. It wasn't. How many? He repeated. Her breathing broke. Tears spilled freely now. 3, she said. Then quickly, 4, maybe 4. The room fell into a silence that no one could repair. Elliot stepped back slightly, creating space. Not for her, for himself. Over a decade of marriage. Reduced to numbers, locations, names. I didn't plan this, Rachel said, suddenly her voice desperate now. It just happened. Things were already distant between us, and I felt stop. Again. That word. Rachel's voice cut off instantly. Don't rewrite this, Elliot said quietly. He looked at her, really looked this time, and there was no confusion left. You made choices, he continued, repeatedly, carefully. A pause. Then, you just never expected them to meet each other. Rachel broke then, not partially, not subtly, completely. Her body folded inward, her hands covering her face as sobs finally overtook her. Not controlled, not measured, raw. I didn't want to lose you, she cried. The words came out fractured, desperate. I didn't think it would go this far. I thought I could keep it separate. I thought, you thought you could have both. Elliot's voice was steady, not cruel, just accurate. Rachel shook her head violently, tears falling uncontrollably. I love you, she said. I do. I didn't know how to stop. Elliot didn't respond immediately. Because that sentence was the final fracture. Not the affairs, not the lies, the belief that love and betrayal could coexist without consequence. He exhaled slowly. You don't get to define love like that, he said. Rachel looked up at him, broken, searching for something, anything to hold on to. Please, she whispered. Just give me a chance to fix this. Elliot met her eyes. And for the first time there was something unmistakable in his expression. Not hesitation, not pain. Finality. This isn't something you fix, he said quietly. A pause. Then it's something you chose. Rachel's face collapsed again, the weight of those words settling in fully now. Because she understood this wasn't a conversation anymore, it was an ending. Elliot turned toward the adjoining door, glancing briefly at the space where his children waited, grounding himself, remembering what still mattered. Behind him, Rachel's sobs filled the room, louder now, uncontrolled, real. But for Elliot, the noise didn't reach him the same way anymore, because the truth had already done its work, and there was nothing left to uncover, only consequences. Morning didn't bring relief, it brought clarity. The hotel room looked unchanged, perfectly arranged, almost indifferent to what had happened inside it. The curtains were still half drawn, letting in a pale wash of San Francisco light. The city moved on unaware. But inside, everything had shifted. Rachel hadn't slept. It showed in the way she sat at the edge of the chair now, her posture collapsed inward, her eyes hollow, her skin drained of the composure she once carried so effortlessly. Elliot stood near the window again, not avoiding her, just not standing with her anymore. Elliot, her voice was hoarse, fragile, in a way he had never heard before. I'm not asking you to forget, she said. Please don't end this like this. Elliot didn't respond immediately. He let the words settle. Then he turned. Like what? The question was calm, direct, unforgiving in its simplicity. Rachel blinked, thrown off by the lack of emotion. Like this, she repeated weakly, without even trying to fix it, without giving us a chance. Elliot studied her for a long moment, then he nodded slightly. Okay. Rachel's breath caught. Hope, fragile and misplaced, flickered across her face. Then answer me, Elliot said. Her expression shifted. Not fear yet, but awareness, everything he added. Silence stretched between them, not hostile, but heavy with expectation. Rachel nodded slowly. Okay, she whispered. Elliot walked closer, not to comfort her, but to remove distance, because this part required proximity. Did you ever stop? He asked. Rachel frowned slightly. What do you mean, did you ever decide it was wrong and stop? Elliot clarified. Or did it only stop when you thought you might get caught? The question landed deeper than anger ever could. Rachel's lips parted, closed, opened again. She started, but the answer didn't come easily this time. Because there wasn't a version of it that didn't hurt. No, she admitted finally. The word came out small, barely there. Elliot nodded once. No reaction, just acknowledgement. Did you ever think about me while you were with them? Rachel flinched. Physically. That's not fair, she said quickly. Elliot didn't move. I'm not asking for fairness. She looked away, her hands tightening again. I tried not to, she whispered. Tried not to, not didn't. Elliot absorbed that, stored it. Did you ever feel guilty? Yes, she said immediately. Of course I did. When the follow-up came without hesitation. Rachel hesitated, and that was the answer, after she said finally. Elliot exhaled slowly, not in frustration, in understanding, after he repeated, not questioning, confirming. Rachel's breathing became uneven again. I hated myself for it, she added quickly. I just didn't know how to stop once it started. It felt like everything was already broken and I was just continuing it. Elliot finished the sentence for her. Rachel nodded, tears forming again. Yes. Another silence. Shorter this time, but sharper. Did you ever plan to tell me? Elliot asked. Rachel shook her head instinctively, then froze, because she realized what that answer meant. No, she said. Elliot held her gaze, long enough for it to settle. Why Rachel's composure cracked again. Not dramatically, just enough. Because I didn't want to lose you, she said, her voice breaking. Because I thought if I could just keep things separate, if I could just manage it, then I could still have this. Our family. Our life. Elliot listened, fully, without interruption. And when she finished, he nodded slowly. You didn't want to lose the version of me that didn't know who you really were. Rachel's face crumpled. Please don't say it like that. But that's what it is, Elliot said quietly. No edge, no cruelty, just truth. You weren't protecting us, he continued. You were protecting the illusion. Rachel covered her face, her shoulders shaking now. I didn't mean to become this person. Elliot watched her. And for the first time since everything had unfolded, he felt something close to compassion. But it didn't change anything. Intent doesn't undo pattern, he said. Rachel lowered her hand slowly, her eyes red, desperate. Then what does she ask? The question hung in the air. Elliot didn't answer immediately, because there was no version of that answer she was ready for. Nothing, he said finally. Rachel stared at him. Blank. Shattered. What do you mean? Nothing. Elliot stepped back slightly. Not retreating. Creating space again. I mean, there isn't a version of this where we go back, he said. Rachel shook her head, panic rising. No, that's not true. People recover from this. Couples go to therapy, they rebuild, they rebuild something else. Elliot interrupted. She stopped. Not what we had, he added. A pause, then softer. And not what I want. Rachel's breathing broke again. Completely. So that's it, she whispered. You're just done. Elliot looked at her. Really looked. And this time there was no anger, no hesitation, no grief left to process, just clarity. Yes, he said. The word landed heavier than anything else he had said, because it didn't carry emotion. It carried decision. Rachel's body folded inward again, her sobs returning louder, more desperate now. Elliot, please? I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling, I'll quit my job, I'll cut off everyone, Rachel. Her name stopped her. Elliot's voice didn't rise, but it anchored the room. You're offering to become someone else now, he said. But I needed you to be honest when you were already yourself. Rachel stared at him, tears streaming, understanding finally breaking through. It was too late. I loved you, she whispered. Elliot nodded. I know. A pause. Then I just don't anymore. Silence absolute. Rachel's expression froze. Not because she didn't hear it, because she did, completely. And in that moment, everything ended. Not with shouting, not with anger, but with absence. Elliot turned toward the adjoining door again where Emma and Noah waited quietly. He paused for a moment, just long enough to steady himself. Then he walked away. Behind him, Rachel remained where she was. Broken, crying, alone in a room that no longer belonged to her. And for the first time she understood the full weight of what she had lost. Not just a marriage, not just a man, but the one person who had seen her completely and chosen her anyway, until she gave him a reason not to. The end didn't arrive all at once. It unfolded. Quietly, precisely, irreversibly. 3 weeks later, Elliot filed for divorce. No drama, no delays, no negotiation beyond what was necessary. Rachel didn't contest it. She couldn't. Not because she agreed, but because she no longer had the ground to stand on. Their house in Seattle went on the market soon after. The same house that once held dinner conversations, quiet laughter, shared routines now reduced to square footage and listing photos. Rachel moved into a temporary apartment downtown, smaller, sterile, anonymous, a place without memory. Elliot stayed with the kids, not out of strategy, out of stability. Emma adapted first, not easily but honestly. She stopped asking about her mother after the second week, not because she didn't care, but because she understood more than anyone had explained. Noah took longer. He asked simple questions that didn't have simple answers. Why doesn't Mom live here anymore? Did she do something bad? Are we still a family? Elliot never lied, but he chose his words carefully. People make choices, he said once, and sometimes those choices change everything. Rachel called often at first, then less, then with a kind of hesitation that hadn't existed before. Because every conversation reminded her she was no longer part of the structure she once controlled. But the real collapse didn't happen at home, it happened at work. Rachel Carter had built her reputation on precision, control, image, trust. She managed accounts worth millions, led campaigns that shaped brands, navigated rooms where perception was everything. And then that perception cracked. It started quietly. A missed meeting, a client complaint, a rumor subtle, vague, but persistent. Daniel wasn't just a man in a hotel room. He was a married executive, with influence, with visibility, with consequences. When his wife found out, it didn't stay private. It never does. Internal investigations followed, not into the affair itself, but into what surrounded it. Expense reports, unaccounted trips, questionable billing overlaps. The same patterns Elliot had traced quietly now examined under a different light, a harsher one. Rachel tried to hold it together. At first. It's a misunderstanding, she told HR. Personal matters being misinterpreted. I've done nothing unprofessional, but the facts didn't align. And unlike Elliot, they weren't looking for truth with patience. They were looking for liability. Within a month, Rachel was placed on leave. 2 weeks later, terminated. The official reason was vague, violation of company policy. But everyone understood what it meant. The woman who once controlled narratives had lost control of her own. Calls stopped coming. Invitations faded. Her name, once associated with success, became something people avoided. And for the first time, Rachel was alone with something she couldn't redirect. Herself. She sat in her apartment one evening staring at her phone. Elliot's name still saved, still reachable, still silent. She typed a message, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too, because there were no words left that hadn't already been used too late. I didn't think it would cost me everything, she whispered to the empty room. But it had. Not suddenly, not unfairly, exactly. Meanwhile, Elliot rebuilt. Not quickly, not easily, but intentionally. He kept the house, not for sentiment, but for continuity. For Emma, for Noah, for something that still made sense. He changed small things first, rearranged furniture, cleared out spaces, removed what no longer belonged. Rachel's side of the closet empty, her coffee mug gone, her presence fading but not erased, not completely. Because Elliot didn't pretend it hadn't happened. He integrated it, understood it, learned from it. He worked less, came home earlier, sat with his children longer, listened more. Not because he had to, because he chose to. And slowly something shifted. Not the pain. That lingered. In quiet moments. In memories that surfaced without warning. But his relationship with it. It no longer controlled him. One afternoon, months later, Elliot stood in the backyard watching Noah kick a soccer ball across the grass while Emma sat nearby reading. The air was clear, no fog. No distortion. Emma looked up suddenly. Are you happier now? The question was simple, but it held weight. Elliot considered it, not rushing, not avoiding. Yes, he said. Emma studied him for a moment, then nodded, as if that was enough. And it was. Because happiness, Elliot realized, wasn't about replacing what was lost. It was about no longer living inside something that was breaking you. That evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Elliot sat alone in the living room. The same space, the same silence. But it felt different now. Not empty, clear. He reached for his phone, scrolled briefly, then stopped. Rachel's contact. Still there. He looked at it for a long moment, not with anger, not with longing, just acknowledgement. Then he deleted it. No hesitation, no second thought. Because closure wasn't something Rachel could give him. It was something he had already taken back. Elliot leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. He hadn't won. Not in the way people imagined. There was no victory in betrayal,